I'm Crystal Marie, your host of the Diva Circle. The Diva Circle is a talk show for women like you, like me, like us, the total woman. We talk beauty, health, encouragement, and the faith needed to get us through life. Think of the Diva Circle as your extended circle of friends. Welcome into the Diva Circle.
Hi Divas, welcome to the Diva Circle. Today I'm here with Adrian, Amantha, and Yvette. Welcome ladies. Alright. A few weeks ago, Yvette shared a post with me in which a woman was on her knees asking a guy to marry her. And as a single woman, I do want to get married, hopefully sometime soon, but I don't imagine myself getting on my knees and asking a man to marry me. Yvette, talk about why that was such a passionate post for you.
As soon as I saw it, I had a visceral reaction to it. I thought, something's wrong with this picture. This is all wrong, okay? And it felt like something that would really be a conversation starter, and I felt that because I had such a strong reaction to it, other people would as well, even if they didn't agree with my reasons for why I felt so strongly toward it. So that's why I emailed you and I was like, you have to take a look at this.
Would you ask a guy to marry you?
I would not.
I would.
See, this is going to be interesting.
Right, because that is a no.
So what's your thinking about that?
So for me, I've always been a real creative type, and I just have it's not necessarily a vision of exactly what should happen, but more just that I want it to be the most creative thing and really surprise me. And I'm yet to find a guy who's really that creative. And most guys, it's not that they don't care, they just aren't as creative. So for fear of me not getting what I want, I would just beat them to the punch and ask them to marry me. Because more often than not, you really know a guy. Pretty simple, you probably know his family, his friends, work. So you could get them all in on it and he probably would be oblivious, to everything that's going on. So for me, I definitely would. I think I could pull it off really well.
For me, no. I do believe that a man should be the person who starts the relationship, and I do believe that men have to value the relationship. And for them to do that, you should be the prize. It shouldn't be any other way around.
I'm with you on that. I strongly believe, especially having a son who's 19 now, they have such confidence and they have such swag, and it's so all about them. And I don't think I realized how much until having a boy. And it's kind of weird, but it seems like they're born like that. And all of his friends are that way, everything. And so seeing how girls respond to my son and to my son's friends, I'm always like, you have to step out, Justin, when there's someone that you care about, and you need to make that known. If nothing else, because it kind of reinforces it, I think, with him. Not that he's even there yet, and it also makes the woman, the girl, feel like she is really valued. To your point, the prize. And I know a lot of people feel like that's kind of a sexist sort of a way to think about it, but I seriously don't. I think it's kind of a natural thing. In my experience, when you see women pursuing men or asking them to marry them or do anything like that, men tend to think, oh, I got this. And it makes them a little lazy. Mm-hmm. So that's my perspective.
Mine comes more from a traditional sense as well. There's the point of the value. I have a lot of value to add. There's also the point of knowing that he's there and that he wants this as well. And so for me, that's a bigger part of it, is knowing that he wants it as much as I do. And I would not want to take that away from him. Just to, go pop the question. I would actually want to allow him to have that experience if that's what he wanted to do. And honestly, if he doesn't want to do it, that's better off for me, because what would the marriage be like if
I think it's an interesting precedent. Not that it doesn't. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Every relationship is different. Mm-hmm. But I do believe that when a woman is taking the role, if you want, decide, is this the role I want to play through the
Agreed.
entire relationship?
Agreed.
Because I know that men tend to, they fall into things and they can go with things even when they don't, when they're not really all behind it, just because it's easy. And it's like you want them to be mindful. You want them to know this is the woman I want to be with for the rest of my life. And this is how I show that. Me asking my husband to marry me, if I had done that, I think my husband really would still be coasting on that. Seriously. You know, and not in a good way. And he's a wonderful guy, but he's a guy.
Yeah.
So, and I think that he would be looking to me to step up in all other kind of ways that I'm not willing to do.
Yeah, it's like a precedent starter, right? If you consider a job, when you're starting a job, when you put in the extra hours at the onset, you're in there for basically 48 out of 24 hours a day, you know, that's going to be expected going down the line. And so in the sense of this, I would say it's the same. If you're starting off on that particular foot, then moving forward, you know, what is that marriage and that relationship going to look like? You kind of set a precedent, so I completely agree.
At the same time, you know, I feel like to say that, you know, if you started a precedent with a guy, or, you know, your long-term boyfriend or someone you found more serious, and you thought he was going to fall into a rut, what does that say about his character? You know, what does that say? Whether, you know, he's a young gentleman or older or whatever, I would hope that if I initiated something really great like asking him to marry me, that it's a partnership regardless. Because, I mean, the same could be said about a woman, like, I waited on you hand and foot, I asked you to marry me, what else are you bringing to the table? So, you know, if you turn the tables around, it could be said that you fell into the rut of me doing everything for you. I asked you to marry you, I picked out the ring for you, I got us this beautiful home, you know, those types of things, and what else is there? You know, so, you know, I mean, I guess you could kind of turn it around and say roughly the same thing, but at the same time, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that you started the relationship, right? Like, he could have still approached you, found you, still being very in an initiator type of role, but you just took the plunge at that moment. And you get that feeling. You know, after a certain amount of time, you know, kind of where this is going. You know, and after a year or two, I can't imagine somebody's just hanging around, you know, like Think Like a Man or something like that, where, you know, Gabrielle Union's in that kind of role. So,
no, I totally have a different opinion. I think that a man knows where he's going to place you in about 6 months. He knows
absolutely.
if he wants to marry you, and he knows if he just wants you to be the girlfriend. He knows that. So he'll stay around for, like, whenever. It'll be 2 or 3 years, and he'll stay with you even if he doesn't really want to marry you. And so for me, a man has to be the leader of the relationship. You have to know that you are the prize. And we were talking about self-esteem in one of our other episodes, and I think it comes down to self-esteem. Women need to know that they are valued, and I think we've lost that, you know, in society.
The other thing too to note is that in a situation like that, let's say for example you're both on the same page, right?
Mm-hmm.
And both of you are feeling this is coming up, this is going to happen. What if he is going through the motions of starting to plan something? Or what if he did not feel like he was in a position yet to quite say that this is what we want to do right now? Maybe there's a financial situation he hasn't said anything about, or maybe personally he's just not there. So for me, you know, I know how I am. I know I try to keep a good pulse on what I'm doing personally, but I would think it would be difficult to try to do the same with someone else. Sure, you talk, but the only person that would know how that person is feeling is them and what they're thinking. They may not tell you everything, right? So that's another perspective I would actually.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think it's more that, you know, oh, it's been 6 months, we're jumping the gun. It's several conversations.
Right.
You know, when you've been into a serious relationship, you've had several conversations. Maybe you even live together. You've purchased, you know, a larger item, maybe a car. You have an animal together. I mean, there are serious milestones that someone would take before marriage would come up. And one thing for me, like you mentioned, financial situations, I've actually always made more money than a lot of my male counterparts. But that would never stop me. It would never stop me from finding a, poor guy or whatever.
That may not stop you, but he may feel a certain
right.
way,
Oh,
right?
But when you work in, in the tech industry, chances are high that you're going to make good money.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say that I only want to date someone who's making 6 figures. I only want to date someone with 3 degrees. That's not going to happen. So, for me to limit myself, but also if I want a $50,000 wedding ring, I should be able to provide that for myself and still have a whole plethora of happiness with him. Money shouldn't be the only limitation for me.
Divas, so we did a Facebook conversation about this topic, and one of the ladies that responded said, the only thing stopping a woman is social norms and the idea that she needs to let a man be a man. Letting a man be a man, what does that mean to you?
Well, in the sense of the discussion here, one thing that was stated was allow a man to lead.
Mm-hmm.
And he should play that particular role. For me, and this takes a personal thing, I err on the side of leadership, but when it comes to relationships, I would like to actually follow sometimes. I don't always want to have that hat on.
Right.
And in the sense of a man, I feel like there's a certain strength that they have, biblically speaking as well. Moving forward, allow him to be a man.
Mm-hmm.
Allow him to embrace that masculinity.
That's a good point. I like that whole idea of the leadership, because when I first hear that phrase, I don't like it. Like, let a man be a man. It just feels to me a little sexist, and it feels something is not quite sitting right with me. But when you explain it that way with the leadership part, I agree with that, because I do think that, as I mentioned before, you're setting a precedent. You want them to feel ownership. And as a woman who, I think all 4 of us we're go-getters, we're type A personalities, we're all very successful with what we do, I'm always in a leadership role.
Right.
And I default, that's my default in everything. So I have to consciously, but I do it because I think it's important, I have to consciously step back and let my husband decide on something, even if I'm like, good God, when is he ever going to get to this? Good God, this is not the way to do it. Because I have a strong opinion about everything. But a lot of the time, I'm like, okay, that step back. You don't have to lead this, because and deep down, I don't want to have to lead everything.
Right.
But then I start setting this precedent where, well, Yvette's going to handle it because she handles everything. Why should I, and I don't want that to happen.
Right. I think that there definitely is some value to, letting a man be a man. But then we do get into the more of like the sexist kind of role, because then it starts to get very blurry, right? Like, well, then let a woman be a woman. You shouldn't have to work. I want to work. I adore work. So to say that I should be barefoot and pregnant somewhere, that's not really for me. And that's not to say that, I don't appreciate coming home and dinner being made and, and those types of things. I don't have to think about it. I just had a crazy 10-hour day of nothing but thinking. It's nice to come home and not, have that load taken off. Definitely. So I definitely want a man who can be a leader and who can take charge. But, again, it can always go 2 ways, and I wouldn't want it to be like, well, I take charge in everything, so we're doing exactly what I say all of the time.
It wouldn't necessarily be like that, but I think, again, going back to the phrase, the intent from whomever is speaking that phrase is what makes it what it is as well. So for me to say something like that, yes, I'm defaulting to the leadership aspect. Right.
Okay. I think that's important to say, because to your point, it can seem very sexist.
Exactly, because you could also go, like you said, the other way, where, well, if he's just, around the way, was a Rolling Stone, right? that in a sense, someone could say that's a man being a man, but at the same time, that's not what I would.
Right.
No, I when I say let a man be a man, I think that women, we have taken on the leadership roles and our jobs and everything like that, and then we come home and we take that on, and I think it's a subconscious thing that we're not even aware of. and so you're diminishing the man's role in the relationship. And I think part of, we're discussing, like, should we ask him to marry us? I think that's part of it. If we start going out and doing that, we are not giving him the authority to start the relationship. So, does your faith play a role in whether you think it's right for you to ask a man to marry you? Yvette?
Oh, you would start with me? That's a very good question. And because I feel like I am deeply spiritual, the answer should be yes. But in some ways, it actually doesn't play as significant a role as you would think. I feel it plays a role in that I want a type of man who's a Christian man, who's a God-fearing man, but not into the original question of whether I should ask him to marry me or not. My reasons are a little more less scriptural based than just my personal preference. Because I know that the Bible is like a man who finds a good wife is a wife, and I think that's wonderful. But a woman who finds a good man is also blessed. So you know what I mean. So I don't believe that my decision is based as deeply into my faith as maybe it should be.
Adrian.
So here's the thing. Yes, it is in a sense scripturally based. There are other things that go into it because growing up you experience different things and you just form who you are. But when I look at the beginning, God created earth. Initially, Adam was created. Eve was created as a helpmeet. I know some people might get annoyed at hearing that, but that's historically accurate based upon the Bible. So, in that sense and regard, I look at that as if we're using the Bible as a guide for living, that's what happened. And in that sense, you've said it before, Pastor Marie,
Adam came first.
There's a reason why.
But then God discovered he was lonely.
Right.
And so he basically created a woman
out of the rib of Adam
to
help me.
Because he was lonely. Not because
it wasn't just you.
Because
You have to
looked
look
around,
at
he saw that all the other animals were paired up.
He saw that
man was alone.
He did see that he was alone, but it also discusses, if I recall correctly, we can pull one out here in a minute.
Break out our Bible.
But that
I got naps
woman was also,
I know, seriously, bring it out.
That woman was also created as help me. So it's just yes, you're lonely. Here's someone to be your companion and also to assist you. And so in that sense,
also a partner.
Right. Exactly. Not to say that a woman falls behind men.
Right.
Yes, you're there. Because if I'm helping someone, please don't take that for granted. Otherwise, we're going to have a little bit of an issue.
Yeah.
So, but I think the point is that he created Adam first for a reason. He didn't create Eve first because he could have done it the other way around. I think his original plan was for the man to lead, and in the course of what we're discussing, if he's going to lead a marriage, he needs to instigate the marriage. So I don't think it works out, and correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody out there has done it, but I don't believe that it works out when you ask the other way.
I disagree, even though I'm on the opposite side, disagreeing with the female proposing first. There are situations and instances, I'm sure, where relationships have lasted, marriages have lasted, when the female actually instigated, or not instigated, but basically initiated by way of engagement. And so in that sense, I would disagree. But again, going back to the main question at hand, the theme of the show, I really feel like, no.
And you feel like it's seated in a biblical
a good
foundation.
Thank you, my lovely divas, for watching this episode of the Diva Circle. Visit thedivainc.com for more information.
Because I know the sentiment part, the romantic part of it. It makes you like, oh God, how could she do that?
Yes.
But she has to freaking wear that ring for the rest of her life.
We talked about. I told you. I said I'd go.